Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Rory O'Neill with me as always. I'm delighted to have Valerie Mulcahy along with us as well. How are you, Val?
Good, thank you.
Very, very nice to have you on to look ahead to primarily the women's league football league final, but we'll also talk about the Camogie because Cork are in it, and sure, Cork people always like to talk about Cork being in finals. No bother to you. So listen.
Well used to it, Mikey.
Indeed,
but we usually lose them late. We're losing a lot of finals lately.
Well, look at. You're not even in this one, and in the football final, Meath v Donegal, obviously in Croke Park on Sunday afternoon. And I had a quick look, Valerie. You have to go back to 2007 for the last time there was a final that didn't involve either Cork or Dublin.
Interesting.
That was Mayo v Galway. Would you ascribe to the idea that there's a new democratic era coming in women's football, or do you think that natural order will return come championship?
I think if you actually look back to the year when we were playing, the era, God, I sound old to make myself sound old. We actually had to play, I think it was something like 6 different teams in the All-Irelands over the 10 years. So while we did manage to dominate, we only ever won by a point or two, and we played Mayo twice, Kerry, Armagh, Galway, Mayo. So like Monaghan as well. There wasn't a vast array. Like I do think, obviously like Meath coming forward now and really raising the bar again. I think it is exciting, but I don't think it's hugely drastically changed. Donegal have been thereabouts for the last number of years as well, and have some really strong key players. Yeah.
It's been an amazing story, Rory, really. I think I would say Meath last year, without a shadow of a doubt, kind of almost overshadowed Tyrone, Limerick, any other GA story last year. I think it was just the kind of Cinderella story, the rags to riches, just element of it, and just the speed of the ascent. And I think a lot of sports fans are probably kind of happy that it wasn't, a one-off, and that they're backing it up now with this league campaign.
Spot on. I think it was, unparalleled in terms of romance, if you want, like that's what we all want from sport, and I don't think there was any story out there for last year that could rival it. It was because the reality. I mean, Val, I don't know whether you agree. No one gave them a chance in that final. Not a I certainly wouldn't have given them an absolute prayer in the final. They were coming up from Division 2 and they were taking on a team going for 5 in a row. Was it? Were they going for 5 or 4 in a row?
Yeah,
Dublin,
5.
Yeah.
5. So, and they've backed it up, and, they just have they have a good manager, obviously, in Eamonn Murray. They've an excellent array of players up front. Emma Duggan looks like she's back. Her form has just continued over from last year. I thought they were made work hard for that semi-final win. Obviously, they were 7-4 down, I think, at halftime. I watched both games. Now, I think it was played in Clonus, but I think there was a shocking bad wind up. And obviously that had a major effect on, one half to the other. But I think they were 7-4 down at halftime, and they came out first 10 minutes of the second half, scored 2-2. Now, obviously, I think Donegal went back down, Mayo went down the other end of the field and scored a goal. And like they were kind of put to the pin of their collar. I thought they got a better test than they have certainly in their round robin matches. And they showed a lot of good character. Again, the kind of stuff that we associated with them from last year's All-Ireland victory. I suppose there's a fly in the ointment, I suppose, really. It's the news about Vikki Wall. And that really is a major bummer because, look, she's an absolute quality player. I mean, I know she wears kind of 13, 14, 15, but she drifts out around the middle. She sets everything up. She just orchestrates the whole thing. She's an unbelievable ball player. And if Meath lose her, that's a real tough one now to swallow.
Yeah. Are the seasons overlapping? Like, will she actually?
The word is she just emigrating though? Is she going out there for a couple? Is the word she's going out for a few years? Do we know?
The season is going to. They're expanding the teams.
Yeah.
So just to mention, we will have an interview with Ailish Considine later in the podcast ahead of the grand final that she's playing against Melbourne in the early hours of Saturday morning. They're expanding it. There's going to be a second team in Adelaide for a start, where Ailish is playing, and the season they haven't finalised it, but it's looking like it might start in September, which would mean that pre-season would probably be starting in July. So it would pretty much put the kibosh on anyone playing in the senior championship here and playing in the AFL. So there's a lot of decisions to be made for at least 14 players around the country.
That's tough now.
So hopefully this isn't the last hurrah for Vikki Wall.
Because she's brilliant to watch. I absolutely love watching her. I mean, I thought, what a display she gave last year in that final. And look, she's been doing it for a long time. I saw her in a club game there in Parnell Park in the flesh, and I mean, she's just quality, absolute quality, and you can't replace that.
Great ball carrier and accurate, and really kind of dominates really on the pitch, and really great presence about her. Yeah,
she is obviously, she was kind of, you couldn't say she was the face of the team last year, but she was definitely the shining star, Valerie Butler. Yeah. They have a style of play that's, they're incredibly hardworking, kind of they get players behind the ball and they break very quickly. It's very entertaining to watch for a start, but it's also incredibly effective. Obviously, they're all Ireland champions.
Yeah, it's interesting because I met her with, say, the underdogs soon after the All-Ireland to kind of gauge how was it going to be a flash in the pan, or how keen they were on trying to back what they'd done and to try and dominate again this year. And she was very adamant that they were all sticking around at that stage. I guess she hadn't got the invite abroad, but she was like, no, we really want to go at it again. So there was that kind of positivity there. But look, I think when players given the opportunity to go into the sun, be professional, get some money, try something new, you kind of can't blame them.
No, absolutely not. You can't.
You just wish them well and hope they come back someday.
A big factor in this one, Rory, will be Croke Park itself. Meath are playing there, I think, for the fifth consecutive year. And Maxi Curran said himself during the week that this will be the first time some of his players have been in Croke Park as players or spectators. It is a factor. It's a big stadium. It's obviously an intimidating place, no matter how many people are there. So there's kind of this idea that Donegal might be kind of shot to nothing here.
Shot to nothing, but I would imagine any victory you get over Dublin at any stage, at any level, I think will give any team a massive shot of confidence, and I think they'll go into the final. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to say they have nothing to lose, because you just don't know whether Dublin will come back, whether Cork are looking to maybe improve and get back up to that top table again. So they probably have to take the opportunities when they come, and I think they will take a lot. The only thing I would say was there was an element of fortuity with their semi-final win. I mean, they scored 2 goals inside a minute, which really turned the game. They were kind of left hanging on a small bit towards the back end. Again, it's hard to gauge because that game was obviously part of a doubleheader in Clonus, and we don't know what way the weather conditions were like. But I think from that point of view, it was a bit of a smash and grab. Who cares? They got the win, and that's all they'll care about. And Dublin don't lose that many matches, so I think that's their attitude going into Sunday. And they play a really good brand of football. They're quite open. I know Geraldine McLaughlin, full forward. Yeah. She's been playing now quite a while. I would imagine Valerie, she's probably going back to she's going back to your era, I would say, so they've got plenty of good leaders in there, plenty of players that have had All-Ireland club success anyway, certainly. So I don't think lacking in confidence I don't think confidence is going to be an issue. The environs, as you know, and Valerie will be much better placed to attest to this in terms of Croke Park. It is a sort of a different environment and a different place to play football, generally speaking. The ground and the ball moves that little bit faster and quicker. So who that will suit, look, you probably would say Meath would have a certain advantage there, given the fact that they're slightly more familiar with it. But I kind of see this very much as a 50-50.
It's they won't lack for commitment anyway. Valerie Donegal, Max Kernigan said during the week they've been training in Omagh because they have so many players, based in Dublin and the area and the surrounds, that's actually makes the most sense for them to train. So if you're a Donegal player based in the Inishowen Peninsula, you've got a fair old trip to training. So like it's phenomenal commitment, but I'm sure like it's nothing foreign to any intercounty player in any code. Obviously, you were playing in the biggest county in Ireland, where so many of the players were from West Cork. But where did you train?
Pardon? We
where did you
trained
train
in Farm,
usually?
which should have been central, but I mean, it took girls 2 hours to get training.
Yeah.
Some girls nearly. What I find interesting is, Meath there's going to be no surprise element to them this year. They have to kind of wear that favourites tag and get used to that. So that brings with it its own issues or kind of challenges. So
the element of surprise, element of surprise is gone.
Yeah, gone. So and people know how they play, but it's still very hard to stop. So and look, Donegal are fierce ball carriers also, and have some amazing forwards who work really well together and hold up the ball and are very hard to dispossess. So I think it'll be a really exciting match. Hopefully it's not too defensive, because I think these forwards can showcase some great football. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Kelsey Nesbitt, Rory, is unfortunate Meath forward who missed out entirely last year through injury and who's made quite the impact. So they have got stronger. So I'm just wondering, how do you see it going, Rory? How would you call it?
Yeah, like I look, you as Valerie mentioned there, I just think that little bit of extra experience, a little bit of maturity in Meath's play now. I think that, Dublin aside, I think they were probably more impressive in their round robin games. Maybe a slightly easier side of the draw. So I have a hesitant nod for Meath, but I think it'll be pretty tight. I wouldn't say by much.
Okay, and yourself, how do you see it going, Val?
Probably, yeah, just given the difference in the matches they played, like 2-point win, 8-point win, they lost by 2 goal win. They've just managed to kind of score more and probably just slightly tip Meath, but I wouldn't be surprised if Donegal pulled it off.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, it's nice. It's a novel final pairing, and I think people are looking forward to it. A quick mention then, obviously on RTÉ television on Saturday evening, we have the Division 1 final of the Camogie League as well. Rory, your own Cork, banging their head against that maroon wall again against Galway team, who obviously beat them by 3 points in the All-Ireland final last year. Galway don't look any weaker. Obviously the Sarsfield's crowd got that monkey off their back and beat Allard in the league final, in the club final. They look very strong. The one thing you'd say is the way the league is structured, that they've only had 3 games each at most. So, and a lot of them played in the atrocious weather we had in the last couple of months. So it's very hard to gauge what is different about either of these teams. Obviously, Cork have new management as well.
Yeah, and both teams going into it unbeaten. I think that's a healthy position in terms of, again, if you're talking about confidence. And I think, look, from a Cork perspective, they're under brand new management. Cathal Murray, I think, is still involved with Galway and has built again. And I think, you're looking at some of their players like Sneeve Kilkenny and that. They're just top class hurlers right across the board. So you'd still imagine, because Cork are it's a kind of a new Cork team. They've had a bit of turnover. There's a few new faces coming in, and Matthew Toomey obviously knows over him, and obviously Davy's gone in as coach. So it'll be interesting to see, will there be a change in the style, change in the approach? Obviously, Paddy Murray being there for such a long time, he had one particular way of playing. Matthew and obviously Davy, is that going to come with something a little bit different? I think they're going to get their best test all year, and I think it'll be a really good contest for both teams ahead of the championship, because look, it's a cup on the line, Croke Park. Sure, what more do you want at this time of the year as you prep for the big one, which is coming down the tracks fairly shortly?
Yeah. Valerie, the sprinkle of stardust, I suppose, in Cork is perhaps being provided on the sideline by Davy Fitzgerald, or stardust might be the wrong phrase, but He certainly brings a little bit more attention, which I suppose is no harm at all for women's sport, which is obviously riding the crest of a wave. How do you feel about this kind of the jumping of codes by coaches who are, I suppose, better known for men's?
Yeah, well, look, I think it'll help Cork. It'll help the profile. He's obviously very passionate. He's huge knowledge. He'll bring a freshness to them. He'll definitely get the best out of them. And whether that's through fear or running them doing mad things. But do you know what? It's something different. It's, he's still about the players, even though sometimes it feels like it's about him. But I think some of that is just to distract and allow the players to concentrate on themselves. So it has excitement and it's something new. It definitely raised the profile in Cork and in Camogie in general. And I think that's the way it's been going. Like, I mean, with the likes of John Cleary there and the ladies football with the minor manager and gone into the men's team now.
It's quite fluid across the board.
Yeah, I think it's great showing the attractiveness of coaching women's teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Roy, the two, well, they were de facto semi-finals because they were kind of group deciding games. Were decided by Cork got a late draw, 1-8 draw against 1-8 apiece draw against Kilkenny with a late free, and it was the same for Galway, who needed a late free to beat Tipperary to decide it. So the teams at the top, they do seem very closely matched, and again, I would use the caveat that the weather for a lot of these matches was really woeful. But there does seem to be a real bunching at the top of Camogie at the moment.
It's a pity that, look, I think in one sense, women's football, I think, is adding real depth to the field with the likes of Meath, Mayo, obviously coming back again, Donegal at the top table, Dublin, Cork always going to be there. Galway were in a final not so long ago. So you've got, a multitude. I think in hurling, unfortunately, it's just lacking that little bit more depth. But look, that's an evolution thing. That'll come. That's just all part of, look, for 100 years.
Hurling's the same.
For 100
hurling
years,
doesn't have the depth.
100 and odd years in hurling, in men's hurling, there was only 3 teams basically shared the All-Ireland up between them. It was like a de facto sort of a tri-nations. So look, I think but at the same time, the top teams, Cork, Kilkenny and Galway, are playing at a really, really good level. And, and I think there's a really good quality to their play. And I think it's just up to all the other teams to try and kind of get up there and match that. And I think Tipperary are getting closer. Mm-hmm. But look, there's a huge depth in, certainly in Cork and Galway anyway, the pick they have, the amount of players that are playing the game at underage level, the amount of clubs that are, fostering the game and pushing it. I see this all the time myself when I'm at these underage blitzes, particularly in the women's and particularly for Camogie, which it's hurling. I don't know why they call. Anyway, that's another day's story. We won't get into that. Right?
No, we won't get into that.
But yeah, so it's just a depth, and that's the thing. If you really want to compete, you've got to put depth into it, and the only way you're going to get depth into it at intercounty level is you've got to put the boots on the ground at club level. That'll ultimately, improve the quality of player that you get at the back end. And I think that's just where maybe the other counties are falling back a small bit,
Yeah.
But I think from a Cork perspective, I think they're looking good for this weekend. I think they will certainly have the grip between their teeth in terms of last year's All-Ireland final. Aisling Thompson is hurling well. Mm-hmm. Chloe Sigerson is going well. Libby Coppinger's playing good stuff at full back. So, look, you'd be hopeful going in there now on Saturday night that they could get the job done and, again, set them up nicely for championship.
Yeah, I'd ask for predictions when I'm talking to 2 Cork people, so I think we'll hold off on the predictions. Yeah. Listen, on Saturday morning, our time, Ailish Considine's Adelaide Crows are coming up against Sinead Goldrick's Melbourne. It's probably not how it's been described in Australia, but here in Ireland, that's how we're describing it. I caught up with Ailish earlier just to see how her prep is going and how her season has gone, and as she heads into, remarkably, her 3rd grand final of her AFL career.
He hits it, it's over the bar! Oh, holy Moses!
Okay, delighted to be joined by Ailish Considine of the Adelaide Crows this Saturday morning, early Irish time, about 3:30 a.m. I think. The Crows take on Melbourne FC in the AFL, Women's AFL final in the Adelaide Oval, which is Ailish, that's a pretty big stadium. It's not your home ground, obviously. You play elsewhere normally, so to have the final in the Adelaide Oval must be pretty special.
It is. We normally play our games at Norwood Oval, which is a significantly smaller oval. So we are very lucky to get into Adelaide Oval for prelims and for the grand final itself when we managed to finish top. And unfortunately, we have done in the past few seasons. So yeah, it's always unbelievable to get into Adelaide Oval because it's the same fields as getting into Croke Park back home. So it's getting into the major stadium in your state is just pretty special. So.
And what kind of crowd are you expecting? Do you know what ticket sales are like, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard much yet on how many tickets have been sold, but I reckon going on last year's, I guess there was about 25,000. So maybe they're hoping to get that and above. So we'll see. Tickets are at a cost this year at $10 a head, but under 18s are free. So that might draw in a few more and a decent crowd. And with the restrictions been lifted quite a lot here, hopefully that'll bump up the numbers. I'm not sure if we'll get 53 like we did in my 2019 final, but fingers crossed that we'll see a pretty full Adelaide Oval on Saturday.
Yeah, it'd be brilliant. It's a good time for women's sport. Obviously, Barcelona sold out the new camp a week ago, and now they've sold it out again. There does see Ireland's game against Sweden, the Republic of Ireland's qualifier next week is sold out in Gothenburg as well. It does seem like women's sport is riding a bit of a crest of a wave. Does it feel like that in Australia as well?
Yeah, it does. And to be fair, even from the get-go, since I've been over here, the support of the women's competition has been second to none, and it's something that it was a big change for me coming from GAA and stuff. And while we got pretty decent crowds when it came to finals back home for the ladies All Ireland, during the round games, you'd be sometimes you'd be lucky if you had 50 people there at times, depending on the time of the weekend and that kind of thing. But over here, Adelaide has been quite fortunate that it's the only team in the women's comp so far. Obviously, that's going to change next year when Port Adelaide come in. But so the majority of football fans are supporting the women's team and are supporting us Adelaide Crows. So we've been really, really lucky having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 at our round games in the height of it. Obviously with COVID that's affected the numbers quite significantly, but still, like, you're always looking at the thousands at each venue that we play in. So it's like the rise of women's sport, and I think the AFLW has really hit the nail on the head from the get-go, having such a young competition and have generated so much support and publicity so far. It's a credit to them, and it's great to see how far women's sport is starting to come in many different ways and in many different countries as well. So hopefully it just keeps rising and keeps going on that wave.
There's I would say there's a disproportionate interest in the women's AFL in Ireland because there's 14 players and the coverage is brilliant compared to what the men's get, because I think the men's, it's kind of almost old hat now, and also when the guys come over they have to commit for years on end, whereas until next season, shall we say, the likes of your opponent on Saturday, Sinead Goldrick, she can do both. Where play for Dublin and play in the AFLW, so that's kind of, I think, helped generate the interest in the women's game, because there's players like Orla O'Dwyer, who made All Australian this week, was still turning out for Tipperary in 2 goals. So that interest is there, but quietly maybe, perhaps because you committed maybe a little bit more wholesale than others in that you haven't turned out for Clare in the last couple of years. So some people may not even be aware of the fact that you're going into your 3rd grand final and hoping for a 2nd title after winning in 2019 and coming up short in the final last year. You have an incredibly successful AFL career under your belt, 4 or 5 years in.
Yeah, for sure. I've been incredibly lucky, obviously signing with Adelaide from the get-go and all that has come with it in the past 4 seasons that I've been there since 2019. So 3 finals in 4 seasons, and that 4th season didn't actually have a grand final because it was the COVID year. So basically 3 from 3 seasons has been an incredible feat. And I think this week, I think more than any of the past few years, it's kind of I've been kind of taking a look back and just at the experience that I've had over my 4 seasons here, and how incredibly lucky I have the opportunity to potentially run out for a 3rd grand final in in a sport that I, didn't grow up playing, and a sport that when I got signed in 2018 was, would have been happy going home with one game under my belt, and that was that. Not to talk about, winning the grand final in 2019 and been fortunate enough to play and getting re-signed and continued after that, and playing another grand final last year, and, another grand final again this year. So it's just been an absolute roller coaster. Like, no year has been the same. That's probably the beauty of it, that, every year has been completely different. And it's had its ups, and by God, it's had its downs too. So, it's been an incredible journey, and I think this week has been kind of just a little bit reflective on how lucky and how good it's been.
Because I say you played in this your third grand final, people might think it's all been milk and honey, but you've had a couple of tough seasons individually. Last season you missed games because of COVID, a dog bite. This season you had injury, and perhaps you were like struggling to make the team, and you got a little bit of luck where, after the defeat to your only defeat of the season, Western Bulldogs, you played, but then you were on the reserve list for the next game, and then actually someone pulled up injured in the warm-up, didn't they? And you've kind of kept your place ever since. So it's not like you have been always an automatic starter, and it's like, it's not, you've kind of had to fight for your position on the team at times, which must make things all the sweeter as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's been like the squad that we have at Adelaide it's incredible. Like, any single player that we have in the 30 could be on the squad. So it's an extremely competitive squad to be part of, and to try and get your spot on that, 21 for game day it's an incredibly hard feat. And for the first couple of rounds, I had been training well, but just didn't get the nod. And, that's how it goes when you have such a good squad and competitive fit squad. And I managed to get my chance in round 3 against West Coast, and since then, I've been fortunate enough to hold my spot, and had that, turn of luck when I was emergency, and Stevie Lee unfortunately had a tight hamstring and pulled the pin on her game. So since then it's been, I've been so lucky to keep my spot and hold it for the remainder of the season. And it's definitely not an easy feat, at a club like Adelaide, where, the players are just incredible, and there's incredible athletes there. So yeah, it's definitely hasn't been easy.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about playing wing halfback then, because I think to most people they're familiar with the game, but they wouldn't be familiar. Everyone knows ruckman because that's the position that always gets discussed when the international rules is on or whatever. But other positions were a little bit more vague on. So you've been playing wing halfback. What does that mean? Where do you line up on the field, and what does your game entail, I suppose?
Yeah, so on the wing, it's predominantly the extra midfielders, except we hold a little bit more width. We're not exactly in all of the contests. We're kind of the next line in, after everyone kind of cracks into each other. We kind of come in, and we're the extra cover behind it all. So we start out for centre bounce at the start of the game. There's one on either side of the square. And basically we just cover up and down the field, and the role of a wing is very thankless at times. There's a lot of hard running, covering back, and running forward to create that extra pressure. So to be honest, it's much like a midfielder role in Gaelic football. You do a lot of the donkey work. You are sometimes involved in the attacking, and you're sometimes involved in the defending of the game. Like, you're there always as support to everyone else, and you're just kind of like that last line of defense for everyone. So it's a tough role, and took a while to get my head around it, because being a winger, you need to know the forward structures, the mid structures, and the back structures. So you kind of need to know everything that's going on in every position. And I think that was probably why initially I didn't start my career at wing, because there was so much to learn. I think initially I kind of stayed mostly half forward. I did a little bit of half back in my second and third season. And this year, I think having the experience of playing up in the forwards, then down back, and then just getting a grasp of, what the wingers actually do, and having that, that past experience of playing midfield, back in Gaelic football and stuff, has made that transition finally easier and more understandable. And I think this year I've really, personally, I've nailed down the structures. I know how the gameplay goes and that kind of thing, and that has really helped me as a winger to be in the right spots and everything that goes with the position itself, and obviously being able to do the donkey work, and being able to run is vital for that role. And that's something that I never have to think about, so that's an easy part of the role, is just literally run up and down the field.
Yeah. It sounds kind of like the Paul Galvin wing forward role of old, really.
Yes.
Yeah, like get in under and kind of sweep up breaking ball, and then just run the legs off yourself, which is fitness required. The season, as you mentioned already, the competition is expanding next year, and there's talk of an August start, which is obviously has a huge impact on this side of the world for the Irish players, because you've kind of gone all in on it, and kind of you haven't played for Clare for a couple of years. But I don't know if you read or saw what the Meath football manager Eamonn Murray said yesterday. He's a little bit I think sensitive that Vikki Wall, arguably his best player and then winning the All-Ireland last year, looks like she'll be going over, which means that she'll miss the latter part of the championship, if not the whole lot. And sorry, I'm just looking for the exact quote here, but let's just say he wouldn't be a huge fan of the sport she's going to play. He said something along the lines of, I don't know why you'd want to play that sport, because it's dreadful stuff to watch. I can't understand it. There's no skill at all. Now he's a man who's hurting. He's hurting his best players going. So I think there might be some emotion in that quote. But it's not a view that's it's not something I've heard that commonly. But at the same time, if Dessie Farrell was going to lose Con O'Callaghan to the AFL, he mightn't be that polite about it either. When it starts hitting, I suppose, the ladies' football, the women's football managers and their teams, the kind of the good feeling towards the Australian experiment might start to seep away, I suppose.
Yeah, of course, and of course you can understand, the disappointment to lose players from the squad, and especially how Meath have been going in the past, 12 months off the back of an All-Ireland, and Vikki obviously having an unbelievable season, and personally, had such a brilliant season. My personal opinion on managers and that kind of thing, getting frustrated, I think is a bit unfair, and I understand where they're coming from and the emotion. Did
you get much response in Clare when you kind of decided not to go back for the last couple of seasons?
To be honest, a little bit. Some people didn't understand the decision, and some people were quite supportive, and others were not, and that's just how it goes. And you're never going to please everyone. And at the end of the day, it's more about you as a person.
It's your career, it's your life as much as anything. No, you're not going over there for a hobby. It's apples and oranges in a way, isn't it?
Exactly. And when, like you said, like, it's not a hobby, whereas at the end of the day, Gaelic football is amateur and it is a hobby. We don't get paid for it. It costs us money, especially as female athletes. It costs us money to play Gaelic football for your county at the highest level and at any age group. So I think especially for a female sport, it's a bit unjust to be, aggravated at players for going over to take up a professional sport, because that opportunity for women is few and far between in Ireland. Unless you play soccer, you don't really have much of an opportunity to go professional as a woman. So you have to look elsewhere. You look at the Irish 15s rugby team, they're not professional. They don't get paid for what they do. It's completely amateur, and obviously I know all about it.
Your sister, of course.
And her story. So
she's effectively a professional athlete who doesn't get paid at this time of year, at least, isn't she? Like when the season's in full flow.
She is, and I think when females have the opportunity, and especially Irish girls, with a game that's so similar to a game that we grew up with in terms of skill set, of course they should grab the opportunity to, first of all, play a new sport, play professionally, and travel the world as well. It's an opportunity that we don't get with Gaelic football. Like when we play Gaelic football, we're on for 11 months of the year. We may have a month off if we're lucky between club and county. But with AFLW, you play your season at the moment for 6 to 9 months, and you can come home in the off season. And at the moment, yes, you can play Gaelic football when you're at home. Obviously, with the change of season, that's going to change a lot of people and their decisions. And I think we've been quite fortunate to have the best of both worlds over the past few seasons for the girls that have chosen to go home and play. But yeah, it's going to make that decision, you're going to have to choose one or the other. And
I think that was always coming down to track one, because the season was very compact in the first few years, and it wasn't that it was a trial, but it was like, we've only got so many teams. But if it was to really become like the men's AFL, the season was always going to get longer. There was always going to be expansion teams. So it's a good thing. But yeah, you're right. For the Irish players, it does pose a question now.
Yeah, like it's going to make players make the decision, because it's not going to be feasible anymore. Because to be honest, the competition is improving at an unbelievable rate. Like my 2019 player would not make it this current squad. Like the rate that it has improved over the past 3-4 years is just incredible, and it's only going to keep improving. So we can't afford to be missing out on pre-seasons and that kind of thing to just come and play games. It's just going to come to the stage where it becomes too hard of an ask to get to the level that we're at over here, and it's becoming super professional, super quick, and they really are pumping in the resources into the game to try and get it to that level. And it will be fully professional. I reckon in probably 5 years' time, we'll have a fully professional AFLW competition where it's 12-month contracts. It's fully paid. It'll be full-time jobs. This will be, what you do for a living for the years that you can do it for.
That's great. And I should just mention that Eamonn Murray did recognise that Vikki would be getting a contract, and he wasn't begrudging her that. I think he was more looking at it from what Meath were losing rather than what she was gaining. So I should just mention that for fairness sake for him. Okay, then quickly looking ahead to Saturday, you're playing Melbourne, as I mentioned, Sinead Goldrick's team, who you defeated 35-21 back in January. You played. I'm going to judge you on your disposals, because that's as much as I can see from the stat sheet. You had 11 disposals. It looks like you had a busy enough game. 11, yeah. You had a pretty good fantasy score. I think it was about 30 points you would have earned any of your owners, so it seemed like a reasonable outing, yeah?
Yeah, not a bad outing. I remember actually preparing for that game and knowing how much running was going to be involved, because their ball movement is, it's immaculate. They're superb, their ball movement. So as a winger, you really have to cover off that corridor outside ball movement. So I remember actually from the game, it was a really, really tough battle that we had against them, and super tight game, obviously quite a low scoring game, and that just shows that the level of pressure that was on the contest work, everything, we were right in each other's grills for the entire game, and it'll be much the same, I'd imagine, at the weekend. It's going to be potentially a low scoring, high contested game, and really, really high pressure, and similar to their semi-final against Brisbane. But yeah, it's they play a really nice brand of football, Melbourne do, and I think we just really need to bring our A game, and to really try and win it, we'll have to be at our absolute best.
Yeah, well, I haven't checked the tab odds or anything, but I'm assuming you were probably favourites, as you were the first ranked team. You made the final last year. You're obviously looking for your second title. I would presume memories of last year's grand final defeat are at the front of everybody's mind this week, and you're trying to use it as inspiration rather than being haunted by it.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's been something that has really driven the group on this year. And a lot of us have experienced the 2019 win. We still have quite a few players from that squad. But I think a lot of the girls last year weren't involved in that 2019, and last year was their first kind of bite at the cherry for a grand final. And a lot of them are younger girls, and wouldn't have experienced the whole lead up and build up and all that kind of thing. So it was so new to them. But I think having that experience of last year, for the majority of the squad, like we didn't have much of a turnover. We had pretty similar girls again this year. Will really stand to everyone. And I think leading into the game, it's just a real focus that we have, that we have that drive behind us. We know that feeling of losing, and for me, I know the feeling of winning and losing, and it's kind of brought everything into perspective again, and it really drives you on that little bit more, having that loss so fresh last year against Brisbane and being outplayed in a final. And like that's a tough thing to take as well when you lose and when you're outplayed. It's a bitter pill to swallow at home in Adelaide Oval. And I think a lot of the girls feel like we have a second chance to make this right, and we're going to do it at the weekend. And so it's the driving force to this season has been, the disappointment of not finishing the job last year.
Okay, well, wish you the best of luck on Saturday, and I hope you get a bit of rest now, because it sounds like you have a lot of running to do on Saturday. So thanks very much, Ailish, and we'll chat to you again.
He hits it, it's over the bar! Oh, holy Moses!
Okay, that was Ailish Considine, feeling relaxed ahead of Saturday's final. Your old buddy Val Stack kind of surprised a few people last year by deciding to go down, and obviously she had awful luck, but she had a better run of it this year, even if the Greater Western Sydney didn't have the best of seasons. I can take it from things you've written about this in the past in the Irish Examiner that there was a little bit of a pang of jealousy that perhaps this didn't happen maybe 5-10 years ago.
Did you ever get the chance, Val?
No, and at the time, actually, like, I think it had been starting, but I wouldn't have left. I don't think any of the Cork girls would have. I think it kind of worked nicely for Breeden that she was finished her inter-county career, still flying fit, and it was a new opportunity. Very brave woman, having broken bones in her neck. But I think, knowing Bree, like, she just wanted to give it a proper go, and probably felt like she let people down where she didn't. But she kind of wanted to prove to herself, and also to give it a proper go. Like, so fair play to her for going back out there. I don't think there was her own family were probably too impressed putting herself in risky situations. But I think she's thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's a wonderful opportunity for herself and her family. So she's had a good year and got to show and enjoy it herself and play well.
Yeah, you say you wouldn't have left, and obviously the enticements to stay when you were playing were obvious, that just the success you were having as a team, and obviously the closeness of you as a team. Eamonn Murray this week, the Meath manager, obviously he's not happy about the fact that he's probably going to lose his best player in Vikki Wall, and he did kind of make some derogatory statements about the sport, saying there's no skill in it and why would you be bothered even watching it, which may come more from a place of hurt than anything else. But as Ailish herself says, Val, it's very difficult to turn down, like, if you have any aspirations of being an athlete full time. This is dreamland stuff. Like, Ailish has been over there for 4-5 years. She's played, this is her third grand final. She's already won one title, and she's living as a professional athlete, and she seems to be making a life for herself over there. So that, or kind of play intermediate or junior football for Clare, like, no offense to Clare, but it's not a hard decision, really.
But that's what's happening. It's like the best players from the, let's say, the weaker counties are losing their best players, and that's having a massive shift in their prospects. So it's a big hit for those counties, and it's happening with like Tip and Clare and that. So, Leitrim as well, I think. So that's tough on them. But yeah, I mean, look, you can't be mad at anyone for trying to take that opportunity.
No,
He come out with some mad comments, right? It is a hard game to play. I don't think I would have actually enjoyed it at all. I watched it the other day, and it's very tough. And like the idea of going to kick the ball and getting taken out from behind when you don't know when the tackle is it's kind of worrying me. Like, so
and getting slammed to the ground.
Eluded that opportunity.
I lived in Australia for a good bit when I was much younger, and I was lucky enough. I got to see the great Jim Steins play live in the flesh. Obviously before, while he was still playing for North Melbourne, I think they used to wear black with a red sash, I think. And I went to a good few games. Like, it's kind of a very American culture around it, in that the game kind of goes on for a long time. They're 20-minute quarters with big breaks in between. There's time off, time on. So there's, getting the stubbies and the beers in and the popcorn, and there's all that type of culture around it, But what I was most curious about when I was there, and this is going back to the mid 90s now, is it any good? Is it any good of a sport? Like, and I'd seen obviously, bits and pieces on the old RT2, and used to have a bit on Saturday mornings and that. And I'd probably go along with Eamonn to a certain extent, right? I'm not so sure like there are obviously skills to this. Like there are fantastic skills. There's incredible athleticism to it. It's very, very physical, and you know, it's a very peculiar type of skill as well, given the fact that the pitches. I think a lot of people that aren't familiar with the game don't realize that the pitch is actually an oval pitch. So, and it's 18 aside, isn't it? Isn't that right? So there's about 36 players with rolling subs. So you like, it can look like sort of, you know, what we would look like as sort of an under eight sort of chaos, you know, you're kind of going, how is there any sort of like rhyme or reason to this? But look, there is. And I'm as Valerie said, there is a lot of skills to it, very athletic, but but you couldn't blame anybody for wanting to give it a go. It's a professional lifestyle, so you just have to say good luck to them at the same time.
Yeah, 25 million Australians can't be wrong, lads. The popularity of the sport over there is insane. So, funnily
enough, actually, it was only the VFL or it had just become the AFL. Like people, again, another
Jesus, how old are you, Rory?
Yeah, I know the history of it. Like it was only played really in Victoria.
Yeah.
Up until about the late 1980s or the early 1990s, and then Sydney put in a team, Sydney Swans, and then a few other cities, and then it has branched out ever since. So it has. I know it's very popular there now, and good luck to them, but not for me.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. You won't be getting up at 3:30 in the morning then, do I?
Definitely not.
Okay. Listen, we'll leave it there. Thank you to Valerie and thank you to Rory. Just a note that, of course, you can follow the Camogie finals on RTÉ Television and RTÉ Radio. And RTÉ Radio on Sunday Sport will have the live coverage of the Women's Football League finals as well. And we'll have all that coverage online as well, so you can get it there. And also, just to mention, this week's We Become Heroes podcast with Marie Crow is with Ursula Jacob, our own Ursula Jacob, reflecting on her incredible career. All right, so thank you very much, everybody, and we'll chat to you again next week. Good luck.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.